thanks for staying with us. Let's hone in on one of those headline stories for you now. French President Emmanuel Macron's future may be hanging in the balance as voters head to the polls for the first round of a presidential race contested by 8 hopefuls. Macron is said to be facing stiff competition from his main rival and far-right challenger, that's Marine Le Pen. The two have been locked in an ugly media spat as they campaigned for voters leading up to this round. Macron said that Le Pen has presented a racist manifesto while she's hit back, saying Macron's comments are a clear sign that he is panicking. The first round of the election begins today and will be followed by a second round on the 24th of this month. Let's get your sense of what else we need to know. Bring in the French ambassador to South Africa, Aurelien Lechevallier, who joins us now via our VinLink. Mr. Ambassador, good morning to you. Thanks very much indeed for your time. I wonder whether or not you've already gotten an opportunity yet to cast your vote.
Good morning. Thank you for having me. No, not yet. Actually, I was waiting for this interview, and then I will head to the French school in Johannesburg to cast my ballot. But it's a very important day indeed.
Absolutely, and I can see you have your priorities straight. Thanks very much once again. And it certainly is an incredibly important time for not only the country, France, but certainly for the man at the helm of the government there. Real speculation that we may see the end of Emmanuel Macron's term. How likely do you think that is?
Well, I think a French presidential election is always something very special in our political system because really the president is at the center of our political regime or government, if you may say. But today, in particular, with the context, we are facing with the COVID crisis, with the war in Ukraine, with the European challenges, with global warming, with all the challenges we know, it's true that it's even a more important challenge. And so, yes, we'll see what happens. I think it's an important day for French democracy. The message, of course, from us is that everybody should go voting. We have more than 45 million French people who are supposed to go voting today. So that's the very important step that they have to make. And then, indeed, it will be very important for the next 5 years.
Yeah. You've mentioned already in part some of the big electioneering issues. I mean, we've also been able to spot, and you'll remember this, those, I think it was yellow vests protests against various issues in France. There were also protests against the lockdown that was implemented there and some kind of mandate for vaccinations. How do you think Emmanuel Macron's handling of those two events at the very least affect his chances of emerging victorious with this election?
Well, like in many countries, we've had many crises. I mean, the times are tough. I think the government was handling things pretty well, but of course there were demonstrations, there were sometimes unrest, there were questions, like everywhere actually in the world, regarding the way the governments were trying to, master and channel the state through this crisis. So it hasn't been, an easy period of 5 years. But I think that today the most important is that the conditions are met to be able to vote, to show that the democracy is robust, to show that the freedoms are respected in our countries, the ideals that we are living for are also protected, and then we'll see what happens.
Yeah, more relevant for you, of course, is to try and gauge how the outcome of this election might affect various diplomatic ties, including the relationship that South Africa has with France itself. Each election, though, is a referendum on how you've done in the previous cycle. With the relationship between South Africa and France in mind, how do you reckon that went?
Yes, it's true. I mean, there are 12 candidates. Each of them has her or his own view of the world. There are very different models of society that are introduced and proposed to the French people. And certainly there will be consequences depending on who will be elected. We've seen with President Macron, a French president really interested in strengthening the bonds with the Africa continent in general. So we can certainly think that if he is re-elected, then there will be also the continuity and a lot of cooperation with Africa. It's the same thing with other candidates, but other candidates have different views. So it will be the consequences and the impact will be indeed quite massive for the next 5 years.
Yeah, when it comes to the contentious issues, of course, Ukraine is top of mind. France and South Africa have seen the situation as it unfolds in that country quite differently. And the way they voted in those two important UN General Assembly resolutions is at least a sign of that. In what ways has that impacted, if any, the kind of relationship that South Africa has with France?
No, we have strong relationships, and I think what we've done, especially in the recent period, is quite amazing between South Africa and France. The way we cooperated in terms of production of vaccines in South Africa, the way we are cooperating on justice energy transition in South Africa with a great support coming from France and other partner countries. When President Macron visited South Africa last year, I think it was really a great success. The relationship between our two presidents is also very, very close and very respectful. So this is a sound relation. But of course, there is a different view on the way we should vote at the different international organizations respecting the war in Ukraine. I understand South Africa wants to keep a balanced approach, but we tend to think that to be balanced now is to show a stronger support towards the Ukrainian people, because they are the one under attack by Russia. So but we will continue to discuss. I mean, that's why diplomacy is useful, and the tenets and the basis of the relation between our two countries is very strong.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned the usefulness of diplomacy, because some people are starting to question that, given how long it's taking to try resolve some of the issues we're seeing on the global stage, including what's taking place in France, the vaccine inequity that we saw at the height of the COVID-19 pandemic. I mean, France itself is entering a new phase, if you like, of its democracy, and there's a lot of introspection taking place insofar as that is concerned. What reflections come up for you about the usefulness of diplomacy, given the many challenges that exist globally?
No, it's very important. I mean, during the COVID crisis, we saw that there were also market mechanisms between the pharmaceutical companies and the countries. And it would have been a disaster if we would have let only the agreements between the countries and the pharmaceutical companies to run the world. That's why we decided to create a global response. Of course, we were frustrated because we wanted to go farther, but at least we had mechanisms of cooperation between, for example, the European Union and African countries to make sure that vaccines would be distributed, to make sure that there would be a pooling, centralized system also to purchase collectively vaccines, and also to support countries like South Africa to make your own vaccines. So we've seen mechanisms of cooperation. It was probably not enough. We should have done more collectively, but at least there was something, and that's why diplomacy is so important and more important given the challenges we are facing today.
Absolutely. And Mr. Ambassador, I take it there's no way of getting you to let us know who you're going to vote for, is there?
No, I can't. We have to stay very neutral, but there will be 6 polling stations in Southern Africa, because more than 10,000 French people are voting today. There are polling stations in Johannesburg, in Durban, and in Cape Town. So it will be indeed a busy day today and 2 weeks from now.
The French ambassador to South Africa there, Aurelien Lechevallier, thanks very much indeed for speaking to us. Once again, certainly an important moment in history for France, and South Africa has great ties with France. In fact, I understand that France is South Africa's 10th supplier when it comes to our global imports. So certainly strong ties there, and whatever happens there might have an impact on our own GDP figures.